Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
And I had a really good friend of mine give me a really sage piece of advice that applies not only to exercise, but to tracking, either in a CRM sense or a project management sense. And the advice was, you have to make it non-negotiable for yourself when it comes to exercise.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Wednesday and it's the Pitchwerks podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. This week we're talking to David Oshlag. David is a productivity and project management guru, great education, amazing list of clients. Started out doing consulting with some names you've heard. But what's really cool is he took all this knowledge and he's going to give us some of that information, but he's also going to tell us a story about how he spun that into a tremendous little CRM and project management tool for early stage companies, smaller companies. So the website is w5templates.com. You definitely want to check out what they're working on. Before we jump into the interview, I always ask you to rate and review this fine program. Go into iTunes, give us a star rating. Say, hey, 5 stars. The sound on this thing is just amazing. 1 star. Well, yeah, the sound's pretty good, but the host is a little, whatever your opinions, please provide them. That's the star rating plus whatever review goes with it. Also, you're always welcome to interact with us through the various social channels. We've got a LinkedIn company page, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the stuff that you need for interacting with the show, however you prefer to do it. So let's jump into the conversation with David Oshlag. w5templates.com is the website. David, how you doing today?
I am well, and yourself?
It's a little warm. It's a little humid.
It's a little sticky.
Yeah. This is that bit where we start shifting out of perpetual winter into like unyielding warmth and whatnot. I appreciate you coming into the Epicast studios with me.
I thank you for having me.
You are very deep into something that you know is near and dear to my heart, where you are an organizational thinker, not just time management, project management, those kinds of things, but you're applying it in larger fashion to different organizations, including a couple that you're the head of. But let's take everybody back. Start off with this. What is your education and background?
Education actually started right here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
With an engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon.
I hear that's a good school.
So I've heard as well.
Yeah.
That led to actually product development, which then led to an MBA, which then led back to Pittsburgh. And we've been here now for 25 plus years.
The interesting thing about that, there are so many of the boomerang people where they get this fantastic education and then they go someplace and they find their way back, after like all roads actually do lead back to Rome. Was that something where you were in a company and then they transferred you back, or there was an opportunity to transfer back, or did you actually change jobs?
Actually changed jobs. The life moment was we had our first child. We discovered very quickly how difficult it was to travel with an infant through O'Hare.
Oh, yeah.
And so we needed to get back closer to Western New York, which is where we're originally from. Pittsburgh, we knew.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, we knew was a 4-hour drive. We're like, let's see what's there. And we already had contacts here. It was very easy.
I wouldn't die from it. 4 hours I could live through.
4 hours was fine. It's far enough to be away from your mother-in-law and your parents, but enough to be on your own.
It's so funny. The young parent math, we all do. You sit there and you're like, okay, how long is too long to have the little kid in the station wagon? How long is too long to be stuck in the airport with a crying baby? Like, you have to do all that math. How many diapers do we have? I remember all of this. My kids have gotten older now, and there are bits where I wish I could kind of go back, and there's other bits where I'm glad I don't have to. How old are your kids now?
Kids are now all in their 20s.
Oh, so yeah, you're definitely far out of that too.
We are.
So tell me now, a lot of the reading that I did, right, just checking out sort of, because you've had a lot of adventures. How did you sort of align yourself around this idea of productivity, time management, Where was the first place you said, hey, this is a place where I belong?
This was something actually I discovered in my first position out of graduate school.
Yeah.
And it was actually a brand management position for what was then the Quaker Oats Company.
Okay.
And their challenge was to figure out promotionally how to organize things, but no one ever showed us how to do it.
Don't you think, though, that's because a lot of the people in the sales and marketing trades don't really understand how to manage time and resources properly?
No clue.
They're so worried about the creative side, they don't worry about the time side.
Right. And the challenge was, so figure out how to make all these promotions happen within a 6-month period of time. Go.
Right.
No guidance, just go.
Well, they always think that it's the creative that's going to drive the bus. But if you can't get the creative out the door, it doesn't matter. Or the idea, or the hot new variation on the idea from the product manager. It's always about the thought, and it's never about the execution.
That's
and I
right.
think it's one of the reasons why it's in our culture on the startup side too. Everybody thinks a great idea will take them where they want to go. Generally, it's more the execution that gets that done.
Yeah. So there was a sales manager that once taught me a very important lesson. So I went to him and said, so our marketing plan is just about there, and we have a little bit more work to go. And his name was Greg, and Greg said, Dave, he said, it's okay if your marketing plan is only about 70% done. He says, that I can execute perfectly. He says, if I wait for you to get your marketing plan to 100%, I've missed my opportunity.
There's wisdom there. There's somebody who's been clipped in that particular shop more than once.
Yeah. And so you need to get close enough, but you need to get boots on the ground. You need to get out there.
People they call it paralysis by analysis. But the other thing is that, and you have background in project management, you understand this. When the situation changes, you have to completely reassess. So do you really want to sit here and perfect something so long that you've actually changed what the basic assumptions are, and you got to start all the way over at zero again? I identify with your sales manager. I didn't think I was going to, though, because like I said, the time management thing's near and dear to my heart. And
right.
I'm always trying to answer the question, why do people not understand that their time is more valuable than their money?
I don't think that they actually step back to think about it. I kind of make it akin to when somebody is given the exercise of having to write a paper.
Okay.
Right. So, and think of it in a test scenario. Everyone's been through college, and you basically have 45 minutes to answer a question.
Okay.
Most people will read the prompt, and they will jump right in.
Okay.
And they will say, all right, it's a stream of consciousness. I'm going. Eventually, you learn the first 7 minutes should be an outline. You should step back, what I call the 10,000-foot view. Step back, think about where it is you want to go, put just enough construct to it, and then start writing.
What am I trying to say, and what is the successful way to approach this problem?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you want to hear something funny?
Sure.
We had a couple of stand-up comedians in here, the Drinking Partners. They're friends of the show. They have a show of their own here on the network. And there's a gent by the name of Ed Bailey who's speaking on this subject, and he hit it almost exactly the same way. He said, you need to know every minute why you're doing it. Now, his is a stand-up comedy, or he is a stand-up comedian. And the best advice that, when we asked him, like, well, what would you tell a younger version of yourself? He says, you got to know why you're on stage. You got to know what this joke is supposed to bring you. You got to know where this joke takes you next, right? He's doing the same thing. And I think it's really eye-opening to hear that from a comic and not from a salesperson.
Right.
Scary to a certain extent when you realize that you're doing long-term forecasting with the salesperson. You're doing long-term forecasting with the marketing person. You're asking them, how many millions of dollars can we expect in revenue and profit from your endeavors? So you're at the Quaker Oats Company. You see this thing unfolding. What's the current state? What was their understanding of the way that this was supposed to be done as you're starting to connect these dots?
Well, it was literally trial by fire. So there was no construct.
Okay.
None. So it was, to me, it was fairly logical because it was something that we had actually learned in engineering school. It was basically you map it out in terms of time and what needs to basically fall where. And so it was basically a 6-month, kind of a project plan, and that became the standard. And they were like, oh, well, we've never seen that before. I'm like, I guess you'd never had an engineer on your staff before.
I've actually, and I'm seriously, I'm not thrilled about this, but I will give it up anyway. One of my secrets has always been hire operational people, not necessarily exclusively operational people, but hire operational people in sales and marketing just to bring that mindset. Money is not the only valuable resource that you're managing. And if you bring in somebody who has had to do field support, project management, product management, engineering, and you just get them to be okay with the idea that they're going to be in the sales department, the marketing department, or whatever, magical things start to happen because these ideas have this merit and people start to copy off of that person's paper.
Yeah, and they learn. I mean, they adapt pretty quickly.
It makes sense when you go home and you budget how much can we spend on groceries, how much can we spend on the cable TV, how much time do I have to do my work, how much time do I have to play with the kids, how much time should I sleep tonight before the alarm goes off.
Yep.
And then they get to work and they're like, nope, it's all about the creative.
Yep, not going to bother with that.
So you go from there. What happens next?
We then actually relocate back to Pittsburgh in order to get back closer to family, back to the city that we knew originally.
And you're carrying this sort of like organizational love, this thing that you know you're good at.
Yep, and then we go to work for what was the H.J. Heinz company.
Right.
And within 5 years, we worked on 7 brands.
Okay.
So we very quickly rotated through from small to large, from one project to multiple projects.
Now, when you say we, is this you and your wife at the same time?
No, it's myself in terms of it's the proverbial we. It's me, myself, and I.
Okay, very good. You bring a whole team with you. That's fantastic.
I bring a whole, and you didn't know they were sitting here. You couldn't see them, but they're here.
I'm known for being somewhat closed-minded. So now you have your own operation. You've got actually a product of your own, and it's born of all of these sort of trials by fire, big brands teaching you sort of like what's at risk. Tell me a little bit about W5.
Yeah, so W5 was born actually out of our consulting business, which we started back in 1998.
Yeah.
And so the observation we made back then, or I made back then, was for a lot of the companies, and so there was Heinz, GlaxoSmithKline, PPG Industries.
Tremendous brands.
Right. So they had classic marketing departments, and what would happen is that they would occasionally lose people.
Yeah.
And then they would have a 6 to 8 month find somebody, bring them back in. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity I saw at that point in time was, oh, well, you need somebody on an interim basis.
Right.
Hire me, which then became us because I ended up bringing subs on, and we would step in and we would manage these brands.
Substitute teaching.
Basically.
Right.
Right. I think the Harvard Business Review did an article they called Rise of the Super Temp.
Yeah.
A number of years ago. Exactly the concept. And so we had all this experience. So it would take us, basically a week to ramp up. We would then run it, and then it would take us a week to transition back out when they would either hire somebody, or in a number of cases we did maternity leaves and people would come back and we would just, leave them.
That's what I was going to ask you, was how long an engagement would be.
The initial engagements were 3 months.
Yeah.
And then typically what would happen, it's like, well, our engagement is about to end. And the marketing director would go, you're going where?
Let's not.
Hello, didn't we talk to you? No. Well, we really want to talk to you about.
Is it possible that you
yes,
could?
Could you squeeze? Yeah, well, yes, of course.
I am so amazed. I mean, people would give their left arm to drop one of the names that you just sprinkled into this conversation. You know this. I mean, I understand you're modest, right? And you don't wear it on your sleeve. You don't market it aggressively or whatnot, but those are a who's who of local companies, and you're fully aware of that, right? And if they're not in the Fortune 500 right this minute, at least they have been recently.
Yes, and the nice thing is that we had one connection led to another connection, and just through some very simple networking, we managed to find the people who kind of knew what our credentials were, and were able to give us the opportunity to prove ourselves.
But you're very, and don't take this the wrong way, I mean no disrespect by it, but you're very unassuming, right? You don't come across as that slick, know-it-all consultant. You don't come across as the stereotypical high-speed, low-drag, let me show you how it's done kind of a person, right? And I think that's probably your secret sauce, but you tell me if you think I'm wrong.
Well, it ties into the tagline that we developed for the business, which was delivering results without increasing overhead. So it's focused around what we can do for the company at the best possible price. And when you're dealing with owners or marketing directors, that's something that they absolutely appreciate.
I have gotten to a point where I read an overabundance of flash as insecurity. When you show up with a shiny, reflective suit, I start to wonder what you're trying to hide. You show up here in khakis and a blue shirt, and you're just like, oh, and by the way, GlaxoSmithKline, H.J. Heinz. And this is, in my experience at least, this is the way the real operators look. This is the way the real operators get things done. So take that as a compliment it's intended to be.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So W5 starts branching out then. Tell me about products versus services.
So the W5 was actually started 5 years ago as a separate business from our consulting business.
Okay.
And that was the trigger for that was we saw kind of the handwriting on the wall, or I saw the handwriting on the wall that there was a chance that the client base that we had was starting to move out of Pittsburgh. And GlaxoSmithKline was the first. Mm-hmm. And then we started to get wind that H.J. Heinz with 3G, that whole thing started to come. And I'm like, well, too many eggs in one basket.
There were a few of these where they felt they had to relocate to New York or someplace somewhere.
Yeah. And so, again, I kind of stepped back and went, okay, this may not end well. And so we need to diversify even more. To do that, you need to prospect. You need to keep track of the prospects as well as all the active projects. So the number of file folders all of a sudden became unwieldy.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, there has to be a better way to manage this. Let's see what's out there. And so we investigated all the systems that were out there at the time, principally for it's a crossover between project management and really prospecting, which is really customer relationship management. And nothing really kind of fit my style, as it were, in terms of the simplicity of what I wanted without having to learn a totally new system.
It does feel like it's close to... See, you have like the definitions of these things, but when you start looking closely, the definitions were written by people who have a vested interest in those definitions, so they're unreliable. Mm-hmm. Customer relationship management, in some people's terms, is about dollars and deals. Right. That's not relationships. I don't understand how that's relationships. Relationships is when's the last time you talked to the customer?
Right.
Does the customer know the name of their current representative? When's the last time they called in with a question, problem, concern? That's relationships. But some sales managers get to pick the CRM and they want to see dollars and deals and graphs and those kinds of things. So the definitions are all over the board. I'm not surprised you didn't find what you were looking for.
Right. And there's just many, many different flavors. So we looked for something that was customizable to what we wanted.
Right.
Still were frustrated there, didn't find it. So we did what a lot of consultants will do, is they kind of just mapped out one on their own. Mm-hmm. We happen to use Microsoft Excel because it's something that we use a lot as part of our analytical work.
Excel has created an awful lot of in-house solutions for sure.
They absolutely have. I mean, it's wonderful what they actually offer. And so we got it about 90% of where we needed it. We just didn't have all the kind of push button functionality that we needed.
Okay.
So then I went actually to a colleague of mine who worked down at Carnegie Mellon and said, I need a programmer.
Right.
Is there somebody that can program in Excel? Because actually behind Excel, not a lot of people know this, but there's Visual Basic. So
I'm still laughing at the idea that you were like, hey, are there any programmers at CMU?
Well, so
I heard a rumor of one that came across campus one day.
So there are programmers that program in all the high level languages.
Right.
This is basic. This is, it's almost like I'm embarrassed to ask, is there somebody that can do this? But we put a posting out on a job board within the ECE department, mm-hmm. and within a day, I get a response.
Well, I don't know that you should have been embarrassed. When you think about it, right? What's the number one thing people get worried about whenever they buy software? What's the interface like? They always worry about the interface.
Yep.
There is such a thing as too many features. There is such a thing as drop-down fatigue.
Exactly. So the premise we had was, look, we already know what we're dealing with. I was already familiar with this, so let me see if I can build something that just piggybacks off that so I can continue to focus on A, servicing my clients, B, prospecting, and make this something that I can use day in and day out. And that last piece is really key. That's where a lot of, quote, CRM systems fall down.
We're back to drop-down fatigue. We're back to like, well, which part of this is critical and which part of this is just important and which part of this is just a priority?
Yeah. So the KISS principle, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, except I modify it slightly, and it stands for keep it super simple.
You don't like calling people stupid.
Well, no, it's not really polite.
I heard.
It's just not a polite thing to do. So, all right. So we're going to be a little more positive. Keep it super simple. It's really for your benefit. But if you already know it, then you don't have that time to learn the new system, which with some of the systems as they come out, people can go, oh, well, you know what? I don't have time to learn it. I'll give it to somebody else to learn. Mm-hmm. And they're not internalizing it, and they're not going to be using it. And things just kind of disintegrate from there.
This is literally, the process you just described is how I ended up with anything approximating a respectable career. Because all of the older lions that didn't want to learn the new tech just kept looking at me and going, you learn this. You do it. Hey, you wear glasses. You're a young guy. You can figure this out. Well, what happens next? I learn it. They don't know how to use it. Right. Somebody expects their information to have made it into this new system that I learned on their behalf, tried to train them on. And what were they doing? Everything but paying attention.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you're very familiar with this journey, obviously. Yep. So you created this as a product that you could then take out, I'm assuming to start with, to the clients you already knew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I beta tested it on myself.
Right.
So we built and we monitored it, and we kind of tweaked it originally for what we were using.
If you want to sound awesome, you have to say you ate your own dog food.
We ate our own dog food.
Oh, you're so awesome.
And there you go. And then, yes, we introduced it to our existing clientele, and they looked and then went, oh, wow, this is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so we just gave it to them. We just said, look, let's just...
Simple's a feature.
Yeah, let's just use it. And they were like, oh, well, this is really great. And then we had just an Excel version for 2 years.
Okay.
And then it became really obvious really fast, we needed a mobile version. So then the challenge came, how do you take something that's built in Excel...
The desktop version.
Get it to a phone or a tablet.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, it was not that hard, and I was shocked that no one had ever even attempted it before.
So what year is this?
This would be, so we started this in 11, 12, December of 13.
So you're not that far behind. I mean, because eventually everybody would get Excel on their device, right? There would be a version of it that would come out. But at that point, you're kind of on the cutting edge.
Right. But the versions of Excel on devices
are not the same.
Well, they don't run the VBA in the background.
How long did it take moving to mobile?
It took 6 months.
Yeah, it seems like it was an endeavor.
It took 6 months. We hired a second programmer. This one just knew everything about mobile. Okay. And it turned out to be a friend of the first CMU person. That's no surprise, I'm sure.
That's a great way to hire. You find somebody that you like, ask them who they know.
And he knew, and the two of them worked just absolutely beautifully together. And within 6 months, we basically had a beta version. We tested that, and then we just rolled that out.
That's fantastic. 6 months isn't a very long time when you think about it.
No.
So you take it to mobile. Now you've got something that you've overcome one of the main, back to time management, right? The main questions, when am I supposed to do this? Dave, when am I supposed to sit down and do my CRM, right? That's one of the killers of CRM practice.
Right.
It's the fact that people can't carve out, well, they can, they just don't, carve out time in their day to write down what happened in their meetings. And when they do, it's hours later and they've forgotten a lot of the nuance.
Yeah, so the mobile allows people to walk out of a meeting, pull up their, let's put it in the project realm, bring up their project, go to the notes section, and they can voice dictate.
There you go.
Their top 5 takeaways as they're walking from their first meeting, as they're walking from their 10 o'clock right into their 11 o'clock.
So you just gave them, let's just say for that meeting, you gave them, let's call it 5 minutes back of their day. And again, we're back to your time being more valuable than your money. I swear, more people need to think of it that way. How much of a jump did you experience once mobile became part of the offering?
Well, that's where people really started to pay attention.
Yeah.
Was when the mobile piece actually hit. They said, "Oh, this is really actually very simple to use." And so that's where people started, asking us, how much we could customize, and we showed them that actually it's very, very easy. And it was the minutes and it was the notes that people found, valuable.
Do you have a sense of how many people are on the mobile version all the time versus how many people still like just sit down? I don't think that number is very big, is why I asked the question.
No, it's not very big.
It can't be.
It's not, and it's actually very, very surprising. You can tell from the back end, whether people are using the system or not.
Right.
Right. And we've got some real loyalists that are in there every single day.
Yeah.
And then we've got some people that are in there maybe once a week.
Yeah.
And then there's some that are maybe every other week.
But what I'm digging at is, what the human behavior is. It's that they don't want to sit and do their CRM at their desktop.
Right.
And you addressed it. Now, as I understand, and I looked through your pricing guide, it's very affordable. Right. And boy, it sounds like I've been doing a commercial for you, and I'm not, but I mean, I was very impressed by the price point. When you added mobile into your product, it went from being hey, that's a nice, reasonable fee, to being, you just gave me all that time back, and the ask for it wasn't that high.
Yeah. The monthly on the mobile per user is $20.
See, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've got this seat, you've got this use.
Right, and to set it up, you take the Excel version, which is also just a one-time license fee, and we just include the upgrades. It's just our philosophy of how we want to do things, and so our target are small to medium business owners.
Yeah,
and so having it be affordable for them is always key, and having it be easy to use obviously is also key.
When you say small to medium, what's your sense of what?
So it's
that
really
is?
It's based on number of employees.
Yeah.
Right? So really the sweet spot would be even just the solo entrepreneurs, the people that are just starting up with teams of 5 to 10. We can easily handle up to about 50.
Right.
But just based on the definition of what people are managing, once they kind of get to that 50-ish number, they're starting to get into business operational type of things.
And the data is more valuable.
The data is more valuable. You need more sophisticated systems. And what we then do, when we actually do this, we go, you need a little bit more sophistication. It's time that you graduate.
Right. You go to Salesforce or whatever,
Yeah.
that'll let you extract that from an SQL environment or
you,
whatever.
you need to do something more with that, because this is, the data is very important. It's very valuable to you. Please take that next step.
It's amazing the companies that have been trying to get this done with what is a dumb spreadsheet and not made the jump forward. But then you look at the price of what they've been asked for, and I'm not trying to kick dirt on Salesforce either. I understand they have a very, very good product.
It's a very good product.
But it is, according to the feedback that I hear from people who run businesses, prohibitively expensive for them just to walk in and tell people that they think, hey, we should spend this money.
Right.
And there's a bunch of different price points in between the two places, the dumb spreadsheet and the, Salesforce with all the bells and whistles and the help desk and the, force.com. And I get it, right? But at $20 a month, and you've given me minutes at least, hours more likely, every week back into my schedule that I can either use to be face-to-face with a customer, or I can just go see my family more.
Right.
Remind them what I look like. Yep. These are all good things, and it's worth $20, $5 a week. Yep. That's not that much to ask.
Let me tell you a secret. One of the things that I've discovered when I give people this analogy, it kind of turns on a light bulb.
Yeah.
So people, a lot of the time, when they are trying to get into an exercise routine, have a real hard time sticking with it.
Yes.
Right. And so
you're looking at them.
And I had a really good friend of mine give me a really sage piece of advice that applies not only to exercise, but to tracking, either in a CRM sense or a project management sense. And the advice was, you have to make it non-negotiable for yourself when it comes to exercise. Non-negotiable.
It's a thing I do. It's a thing I'm trying to do.
I do it every day. So with that mentality, if you do it for exercise and you just take it and you just apply it to CRM. You do it every day. And the easy way to do it is after I get done with a meeting, I take that 2 minutes and I voice dictate what those notes are. Like you said, before they kind of go off into the ether sphere, and then I never remember really what that fine detail is again.
Over years, I've seen an awful lot of that detail just disappear, and it was so useful.
Right. And you have that great idea, and then you're like,
I know it.
Can't.
What was it he said that I reacted so smart to?
Right. I can't remember. Maybe I'll get it when I shower or when I drink, but it never comes back.
A lot of times.
Yeah. But if you capture it quickly, and that's because obviously it doesn't go from short-term into long-term memory, it just goes poof.
But let me be really hard on people for a second. If you don't catch that and say, this is why I'm not going where I want to go, then you are exactly where you should be. If you don't catch the fact that the details squeak out on you every day,
right,
then you've made an active decision. My friend Joe likes to say, once is a fluke, twice is a coincidence, and 3 times you're doing it to yourself, right?
Absolutely true.
The 3rd time you let the details squeak away because you just couldn't be bothered to voice dictate.
Right.
It's you now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And the phone manufacturers have made it super easy to voice dictate. And so we just, simply tie it into that. We just used a feature that was existing on the phones.
Yeah.
And it feeds into our system. So as soon as you voice dictate it, basically it's in your cloud account and then it comes back onto your spreadsheet.
So you're still doing the consulting though, right?
Still doing the consulting.
So the product stands apart from that as an offering. Some people just take the product. Some people just take the consulting. Some people take both.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. When you're giving the pitches for these things, right? Are you doing this directly, or do you have salespeople that are handling it? Or
no, I'm doing it directly. I'm doing it personally.
And what's that look like? What features are you calling out? How do you pitch, say, the W5 CRM?
So really, it's a matter of, you've already pointed out the fact that people can gain time.
Yes.
Right. So it's time, cost, and it's really the benefit that they get by being organized, and that's the productivity piece of it.
Right.
And we go the extra step and basically say, look, certainly for the market that we're in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, we say, we're here and we can do this personally with you. Yeah. Right. So, and because we have the consulting background, we can usually talk to folks and say, you know what, we can help you set this up. We can do this in 30 minutes. This is like a mini strategic review. Who are your key customers? How would you classify them?
Right.
Not sure I ever thought about that. Well, let's just take 3 and load those in. Now, tell me how you manage your workflow. Right? What are you doing? Are you just doing a simple? I'm scheduling a meeting. I'm scheduling a call. It's an action item for me. It's an action item for the client. Let's start with those 4. What type of a priority system do you have? Is it an ABC? Is it a 1, 2, 3? At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is create a document that you can see. And so we have what's known as a dashboard. And there's many different versions of dashboards. And so now we're looking back down and we're seeing everything. We're seeing the big picture.
All right, so that's all the time we've got this week. David Oshlag, thank you so much for coming in. At the bare minimum, download their free trial and just see what you think. As for me, we're going to start working on another show. We'll have that for you in about 7 days. Don't forget to interact with us on the social medias, and I'll catch you then.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.